Hello everyone, this is Rachel Kirkland here, the Modern Shaman. Thanks for being with me this week for another Q&A video. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, hit that like button or that little notification bell so that you'll get kind of notified anytime that I make a new video. If you are into this thing and you'd like to schedule a personal time of connection with me, in terms of my one-on-one sessions, this is what I do full-time. So if you'd like to do that via Skype, phone, or in-person sessions here in San Antonio, Texas, feel free to reach out on my website, which is themodernshaman.net. I will also say that my next round of classes are coming up for the fall. So if you're interested in psychic development and really learning how to develop and strengthen your skills in terms of connection to the non-physical realm, as well as how to integrate that world, like what do you do once you're connected? How do you live a normal life? How do you have a sense of integration into your regular waking world? We tackle a lot of things in those classes. They are intensive and a great way to really give you a sense of understanding within the psychic phenomenon. So if you're interested in that, the next round starts up in August in the fall. Gives you plenty of time to get your schedule set. I would love for you to join us. I do those online through live streaming as well as in person here in San Antonio, Texas. So feel free. There's no excuses when it's online. You can really, it's just a cool community too of other people that are there that are interested in the same kind of thing too. Okay, so let's jump into the question for the day. I have blabbed enough. Okay, this one says, "Hi Rachel. My question for YouTube is, are elements, earth, fire, water, air, self-aware? Can we communicate with them? If so, how do we start? When I was a kid, I would sit in nature and feel in my heart that there was something communicating to me. It feels personal. Even with trees and plants, it's a connection where I sometimes feel I could merge and not be seen, as if we're one. As a shaman, I feel that you could explain this better. Thank you, much love." Okay. So connection to the elementals. I love this. I'm right with you, mama. Totally with you. Okay. So there's a couple kind of questions inside of this question. The first thing that she asks is if they are self-aware. So here's the thing that I will say. This is consciousness. We are living and breathing and interacting with various forms and levels of consciousness. Now, not all of those are self-aware and have metacognition, right? Awareness of your own thought process, awareness of your own sense of self. That is another level of consciousness. I will say, I guess let me tell you this, or this is a story. I'll start with the story. Just the other day, I was walking in nature, and this was like an area in my neighborhood where they're doing new building, and it's a beautiful area. There's this large kind of vista, and the view is so pretty, and they're clearing it. So they were clearing a lot of trees and making these layers to kind of have hills of houses and rows of houses. So being super great that I am, I was deciding to go check it out in the construction site when they weren't working. I was like, oh, exploring. So I was walking around there and I started seeing all the area where they cleared the trees, and I started feeling really a lot of compassion for the trees. And so I was like, oh, and so I started communicating with the trees and just saying, I'm so sorry that we did this to you as humans. I'm sorry we cut you all down. And they had been kind of churned in some areas into mulch or kind of like thick areas of tree bark, and there's some areas that had been burned and cleared, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry we burned you, and just feeling this kind of sorrow for the trees. And you know what they did? when I was communicating telepathically, the trees laughed at me. They laughed at me and they said, "Oh, you little human, you're so human." They were like, "Rachel, of course, look at you, human. You make the trees human. We're not human. We don't feel like humans feel. We have no fight with changing form. We love being mulch. We love being shaped into smoke and burned into these different chemicals, and we thrive in the sense of change and formless growth and grace." They just had so much grace, you know what I mean? It was just like I could feel them just like flowing and loving the sense of movement of their changing form, completely free. And they had no sense of sorrow like I did as a human. They're like, "We're not human. We don't fight that sense of change. We go with it. We flow with it. We thrive in a sense of shifting and movement and expression." And each avenue, whether it's bark and mulch on the floor or chemicals in the air, was viewed as a sense of celebration, you know, and joy. And I was walking away from that and I was like, I totally get it, you know, that, yeah, this is my humanness turning a tree into a human. Thinking that they think like me. This is what we've done in the past, right? What a lot of religions do with God, right? We turn it into our image instead of making ourselves notice and observe the free imagery or the boundless nature of these other forms of expression. And so I will say that there is consciousness there, there is communication there, but it is not human. It is not through the mind. They don't process like we process. And so, and even the level of communication it can be processed through our own psychic awareness and our own extrasensory perception. I was talking telepathically to the trees, but essentially it was more talk through vibration and the alignment with vibration. If you've ever in subtle ways been aware of non-physical, certain energies personify themselves more than others. Some are more etheric and ethereal, meaning they have a sense of almost like dissipated light, okay, instead of a sharp form. They have more cloudiness to their nature. And this is similar to the way that you ask about communicating with the elementals. You can feel the vibrational tone that they carry. They even carry personified traits. And you can get to know those if you're drawn to them by just sitting and setting the intention to connect with that elemental. Actually, in my psychic curriculum, and I think it's level 3, we go through a process of aligning and shape-shifting into each elemental so that you can learn what that energy body feels like, so you can get to know it. So you, even as a healer, can know what elementals are beneficial for certain ailments within the body or dis-ease within the body, that you're drawn to pulling in certain energies that will feel like they balance or counterbalance our natural tone. Ayurvedic medicine kind of does this with the elementals, where they'll say that you have more fire in the body or more air or earth. They'll try to balance things out that way. Let me see what I want to say about connecting with them. You asked, like, where do I start? And then you explain what you were doing as a child, like sitting in nature and your heart was kind of feeling like they were communicating to you. You're already answering your own question here. You're doing it intuitively. This is so often what we do. We start to do the things. We've just never had someone say, textbook, this is how you connect. You're intuitively connecting, and this is so much of how nature works. It is our organic, natural sense of connection because it's energy to energy, it's vibration to vibration. So especially when you're surrounded by nature, you will feel like their energy is the most dominant energy and you are the guest, right? You are the one And this is very easy to, especially if you're clairsentient, if you feel non-physical energy through the body and translate that way, you will start to feel like you harmonically, in terms of your resonance, start to resonate with the energy in the forest. If you're surrounded by trees, or if you're in water, in a waterfall, or whatever it may be. This is part of what, hydrotherapy and Roman baths and things like this. For a prolonged period of time, when you're in a certain elemental energy and that resonance starts to become the dominant vibrational pace, you start to mimic it. And so there becomes a sense of flow, and similar to what you said, as you start to feel like you become one, or you start to merge into their energy. This is very real. Essentially, it's happening on a vibrational level with you. So you begin to energetically mimic that vibration and sustain connection. Now you are connecting, even if you're not open to your clairaudience or your telepathic communication, you're still vibrationally connecting. Oftentimes, this is a level of communication in itself. One of oneness, one of love, one of surrender, one of unity, one of acceptance. And people feel this when they are in nature. A lot of times they feel very peaceful because they are aligned with that vibrational energy. And essentially they're communicating back and forth a sense of, but it's more like how music communicates. It's more like if someone's playing violin and someone comes in harmony, they're not really talking, but at the same time, they're communicating with each other in a language that's understood. This is what a lot of times musicians will say when they're in the zone and they're jamming together. They're not really talking, but at the same time, they're in a deep, harmonious sense of communication that's felt energetically, that's felt vibrationally on a core level. And so this is what's happening. This is the type of communication that you're describing here. It's very valid. It's very real. That's why we love nature. It's a beautiful form of vibrational connection and communication. Now, if you want to, on a higher level in terms of consciousness, if you want to connect with very particular stones or get to know particular trees that have been in your yard or in your ancestral lineage for a long time, or elemental kingdoms of the fairies and trolls, and there's all sorts of layers to this in the mystical realm. And if you feel drawn to that, you can set the intention just to connect with that vibrational frequency. Sometimes without even realizing it, you will kind of get drawn into the realms within that area. Say, for instance, you are in a particular area of nature. I'll give an example. Okay. There is here in Texas, there is a rock called Enchanted Rock. It's known as kind of a vortex point, an energetic point. It is a large rock of granite. So talk about vibration, talk about quartz crystal and a sense of moving and communicating through stone. And underneath it, anytime when Peter and I have gone there, there were times where we would just lay on the rock and I would feel a sense of community or a complete system, dimension, ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, inside the rock, as if there were peoples in the rock, as if there were, as if there was life inside of it. And sometimes then we start moving into dimensional connection with the smaller systems within the system we're communicating to. Just like our bodies, we have this body and you can be talking to Rachel, but you could also, if you're a doctor or some sort of naturopathic medicine or moving into, you could be talking to my cells, you could be talking to particular organs within the body. There are systems within the systems. And so you can refine that level of communication on many different layers. All valid, all open to connection and communication. So depending on what level you want to jump in at, I mean, it's It's like Alice in Wonderland falling down the rabbit hole. You know, there's so many layers that you could go into in terms of communication and connection. But when you ask, like, in what ways to start, I would start essentially by aligning vibrationally, putting yourself in the environment in which you want to connect, like either lighting a fire, if you want to, you know, sit with fire, light a fire in your fireplace, connect with it visually, close your eyes and connect with it energetically, and then have a sense of making yourself aware of what that energy feels like to you. How does your body translate it? Do you feel like there's communication? Open up a sense of dialogue, like ask it if it wants to speak to you, ask it if it wants to communicate to you. Close your visual eyes and move into an internal visual. Do you see any sort of images that is communicating to you when you're in the intention of communication? Or you can hold a stone and do the same thing. I have a video on connecting to rocks and having a sense of crystals and getting to know your crystals. There's this sense of personality traits held within even the periodic table. Each of those elements feels different and is translated differently on a vibrational form, and we can receive that as communication if you're open to that. There's so much more to communication than just language, right? So much more. And this is part of your psychic senses, is really tuning into how many ways that you can receive communication from all sorts of forms or formless space. The next thing I would do is to open a sense of dialogue and have that. The thing is that just like I did that one time when I was walking in the trees, we tend to put our own filter on it. And unless you're open, try to stay very open in a way of just kind of like getting to know someone. Have this openness of how they want to communicate with you. When it's something that's non-human, sometimes it baffles our mind. It's like, oh, they're not processing it through a brain. How can someone communicate without a brain? It's like we're so used to being in this form that it almost feels counterintuitive. You almost have to wipe that clear and just get to know what it's like. And sometimes it's very amorphous. It's like I said, almost like diffused in a way, unshaped, undefined, undulating. And so get to know it in that way where it feels like there's an openness there. And the biggest thing, and I say it all the time, is your intention, your sincerity with what you're doing. That you're not just kind of silly with it, that you're genuine, that you're like, I genuinely want to connect. And that level of sincerity is communicated, and so it will come back in equal measure from the other side with non-physical. There are worlds to connect to, Mama, and if you're desiring it, it will be there for you. Blessings. Stay tuned. We will be back here next Friday with another video. Love you guys.